Better late than never. Here's what it's like to cover the Daytona 500 as credentialed media. Now, I had been to this track before in October of 2023 to tour it, but I'd never actually been to a race here. So though I was incredibly nervous, at least I knew my way around. When we finally exited the tunnel and were in the infield, the nerves started to calm down a little bit, and I was ready to kick off my Wednesday. I checked out the Cup Garage area before practice began, and then we entered the day that I was warned about by my peers. Media Day. It is a 7-hour event in the Daytona Club building with zero, and I mean zero, breaks on Wednesday of speed weeks where the drivers come in by the handful and talk to the media for 15-ish minutes each. NASCAR's media partners, Broadcast News, and the rest of us media had our own separate stations to get content. And you get so much content, you almost do not know what to do with it, but it's a great way to start the season and build stories for the weekend. I used this time to really test out my equipment and find the best option for me this weekend, all while trying to get content uploaded and edited together to post for socials. It was a lot. But I swear it was light out when I was last outside. I hustled back to the media center to get ready for qualifying, and something interesting about my weekend, not only was I writing, interviewing, and running socials, editing video content, etc., but I was also a photographer and videographer this weekend. And part of that was making sure I was at the right place at the right time and deciding what was more of a priority. Do I chase down interviews or do I make sure I'm getting photos? And that was a balance I hadn't had to deal with before, but all things considered, I think I handled it pretty well. I was there to get shots after qualifying, made it back to the media center in time for the press conference, and called it a night. And just like that, we're at Thursday. We got all set up and ready to go, and unfortunately, due to rain, practice for ARCA and truck was canceled, but it did give us time to get caught up on all the stories for Media Day, which was phenomenal. All of a sudden, it was time for the duels, and for the races, I'm typically floating around between pit road and the media center, but because I was on photo duty, I was outside with my radio the entire time. All eyes were on Justin Allgaier in Duel 1, and he raced his way in. The celebration was insane, and the energy in the track was electric. From Bubba Wallace winning the duel to this moment, it was one of the coolest press conferences I have ever been a part of in my life. You just felt the joy from everyone, and it was just so awesome. I edited together some interviews from the duel and socials, and then you had duel number 2, which had a completely different vibe due to the caution call. Austin Cindric right here reacting to all of it on Fox. I hustled to Victory Lane to get photos and then was back in the media center for the press conference, and you're all getting the flow of things right now, and then called it a very late night. Friday morning rolled around and I started off my day chatting with Chase Briscoe for an exclusive interview on Racing America's socials. Then it was time for truck qualifying, and because practice was canceled and I wasn't able to get photos for the trucks before, I used this time to get photos and sat by pit exit. I got lunch in the media center, and honestly, the biggest battle that we faced this week was media center food versus the media, and I will just leave it at that. The truck race was upon us, and it was a solid race that saw Parker Kligerman crossing the line first. I interviewed Corey Heim, who was in second place. But then we all know what happened next. Happy Saturday, though. I had my photo vest on and was ready for the Xfinity Series qualifying session when, what do you know, rain ruined it. So we used this time to get caught up, and before we knew it, it was time for the ARCA race, which was a race indeed. Congrats to Butterbean, though, on the win. That was awesome for him. And by the time that race was over, the skies were blue, and just look at this view from the fan deck. It does not get any better than this at Daytona. And the Xfinity Series race was a go, and I was on a mission to find a better spot than the front stretch to take photos because I was so sick of front stretch photos. I got lost, got some good views along the way, but finally made it to turns 3 and 4 where I got some stellar photos that you can find on my Instagram. And as always, the Xfinity Series produces some of the best action in all of NASCAR, and just like that, Saturday is over and it's Daytona 500 day, which started with a wake-up call of 4 a.m. to go through security for the president's arrival later in the day. So many of us got like less than 4 hours of sleep. I was exhausted, but this was the norm for the week. Nevertheless, she persisted, but took the time to roam the garage area, start my social media takeover on Racing America, and watch these teams working on their cars to prepare for the Great American Race. And look at the difference a bit of sunshine can make. I walked my way over to see the cars on the grid and to get a look at everything on the front stretch in the sea of people, the absolute sea of people signing the start-finish line. Then I saw what we all dread on race day. Rain clouds. We all knew what was on its way, so I booked it back to the media center where I saw Air Force One making its way to the track. And then I saw these two. I love Alan and adore Anthony Mackie. Big fan of him in the MCU, so it was a very surreal moment to have him at Daytona. After that, I went back outside for pre-race ceremonies, and I have never been on pit road when it was this packed. We were literally like sardines, but at least the flyover was beautiful, and before we knew it, the race was green, and to be honest, it did not hit me until this moment that you're seeing right here that I was covering the Daytona 500, so I got really emotional, but that quickly went away when I felt raindrops and the race went under red. But luckily, after a few hours, we went back to racing. I made my way to turns 3 and 4 for photos. The views were stunning, and then booked to pit road by the end of the race to get some interviews, chatted with Jimmy Johnson, so I crossed that off my bucket list. I recorded an episode of ATYL with Toby Christie and called it a trip. This was one of the most challenging and rewarding race weekends I've ever covered. What a dream. I appreciate Racing America for the opportunity and cannot wait to cover more races again in the future.